Hey everybody, Mr. Beers here. Today we're going to talk about Romare Bearden, and we're going to talk about instrument collage. Here's an example of one of his artworks. Why don't you take a moment to check that out? Okay, Romare Bearden. He was born September 2nd, 1911 in Charlotte, North Carolina. He passed away in March 1988 in New York City. Romare Bearden was an American artist, author, and songwriter. He worked with many types of media, including cartoons, oils, and collages. Born in Charlotte, North Carolina, Bearden grew up in New York City and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and graduated from New York University in 1935. So that's just a little background information about our artist for today. And here's just a couple-minute video about the kind of artwork that he makes.
Today, we're going to talk about the artist Romare Bearden. Romare Bearden was a 20th century American artist, and his artwork depicted the African American culture and experiences in creative and thought-provoking ways. He was born in North Carolina in 1911 and spent much of his career in New York City. As a self-taught artist, his early works were realistic images and had some religious themes. He later created abstract and cubist-style paintings in oils and watercolors, and he is best known for his photo montage compositions. These are works of art made from torn images from magazines, and they were put together to make visually powerful statements on African American life. The works of Romare Bearden cover a wide range of techniques and styles. In college, Bearden aspired to be a cartoonist, and he drew for Boston College's humor magazine in the early 1930s. He continued his cartooning and moved to New York City. He studied there in medical school and graduated with a bachelor's degree in science. He lived in Harlem later and joined the Black Artist Group and became excited about modern art, particularly Cubism, Post-Impressionism, and Surrealism. He created paintings of scenes of the American South, and some works were realistic and showed influence from Mexican muralists like Diego Rivera. Bearden grew up during the Harlem Renaissance, and he was exposed to many of the great jazz musicians such as Duke Ellington and Billie Holiday. Bearden's collages reflect some of these elements of jazz and his characters in his use of materials. One of Bearden's most famous art pieces is the block. This is an art piece that is of Harlem Street with row house buildings and the bustling life of the neighborhood. Made of shapes and images, he captures the life and faces of people living on his block. It reveals a lifetime of his experiences and those living on his street in Harlem.
Okay, so that's just a little bit about our artist, Romare Bearden. Let's take a closer look at one of his artworks, and let's focus on describing some of the things that we see. For example, lines, shapes, color, texture, value, and form. Those are our elements of design. So when I look at this, I see Four musicians. Kind of reminds me of the Three Musicians by Pablo Picasso. I see four different instruments. This looks like a big bass of some kind, a trumpet, some drums, and a saxophone. I see lots of different lines. So we have straight lines and some vertical straight lines, some horizontal straight lines, some diagonal straight lines. I see some wavy lines, a little bit of wavy lines, especially around here in this shirt. Okay, I see all different kinds of shapes. I see rectangles, large rectangles and small rectangles. I see some squares, and there's just all sorts of different shapes. Some of these shapes don't even have names. This is similar to a rectangle. Here's like a triangle. Okay. Here's a long rectangle. There's a circle, some ovals. Okay, and the colors. There's many, many different colors. So I see like the dark red. Now, this building, we got yellow, we got blues and purples. Basically, all the colors you see in the rainbow. Looks like there's a bunch of different textures as well. There's like a lined texture here. This looks like a brick texture back here. This looks smooth. This looks bumpy up here. I don't see much value. Value is shading, if you remember. I don't see a lot of shading and shadows. There's a little bit right here on the trumpet. Okay. And there's implied forms to make it look 3D. The trumpet looks kind of 3D. The drums look a little bit 3D, like a cylinder. But most of these shapes look pretty flat. Okay. Let's analyze this a little bit further. Let's talk about what's the same and what's different in this picture. Well, what's different is that all the musicians look different. They're all made of different things. It looks like the artist cut out and glued all these different kinds of shapes to create his collage of these four musicians. Now, collage is when you cut out different colors and textures and different pieces of paper and put them together in a way that creates an artwork. And it definitely looks like these guys cut out all these different kinds of colors and textures and patterns, okay, throughout the picture. So yeah, they look different, but they're the same in that they are all made out of all these cut up pieces, right? They all, like I said, they all look different, but they all have patterns, different kinds of patterns, but they all do have patterns. Like I see these black and white patterns here. I see the zigzag line pattern here. I see color pattern here, blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue, red, blue, red, blue, white, blue, white. Line shape, color, text, no, line shape, color. Did I get them all? Oh, shape patterns. So here's the shape patterns. We have like a checkerboard of these squares and rectangles back here. So it's full of all different kinds of patterns. And the last thing I always like to ask about our artist is we're going to try and interpret his message by answering this question. If this was the cover of a book, what do you think the book would be about? And we're looking for our theme or the mood or any feelings or some sort of story that he's trying to tell us in this picture. So what is the artist trying to tell us? And a good way to figure that out, let's talk about if this was a cover of a book, what do you think the book would be about? Take a moment to think about that. It's pretty easy to put together a story, use your imagination, put together a story for this picture. You can see that there are, it looks like maybe it's a story about a celebration of some kind because we have a band that's playing music. And I kind of picture that they're kind of looking at a big audience of people celebrating something like a birthday in this picture. And it's a celebration in the neighborhood that they live in because it looks like they're kind of outside of the building where they live. Okay, that's what I think. And it's definitely that kind of theme for me. The mood that I get when I look at this is it makes me feel happy because it looks like they're playing music, having fun playing music. All right, and that's how I feel. So here's your, at this point in time, you need to get a couple of things. I'm going to give you some time. to make our art project. All right, we need a couple of different pieces of paper. If you can find colored paper, that would be awesome. Okay, otherwise maybe get a regular piece of paper and color it real quick with a crayon, just to make that color, that paper a different color. So at least one white paper, and if you have to, get a couple more pieces of white paper and add that color. Just make it a color, solid color. I might use wrapping paper as kind of like my colored paper. It depends on what I can find, right? Or I might just use colored construction paper. You need pencil, an eraser, scissors. We're going to cut some stuff out and maybe something to adhere it to the paper with, whether it's glue, a glue stick, a piece of tape, anything that you can use to glue it together. Otherwise, for all these different steps, you're just going to have to draw if you can't find any of these supplies. So all the things that we're cutting out and gluing, you might have to figure out a way to just draw that, which isn't a big deal. Now you just have to think about a different way to do it. Okay. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's it. Yep, that's it. So take a few moments to try and find those supplies. We'll get started in just a moment. Okay, so hopefully by now you've had a few moments to gather some supplies and you are ready to get started. So the first part of our project today is we're going to be creating our own instrument collage. So the first part is to draw an instrument large on your paper, trace it with something darker, like a pen or a marker. If you don't have that, you can just press harder with your pencil, and then we're going to cut it out. Okay, let me show you an example. I put up these different drawings of all these different kind of instruments that you can use to copy if you don't have one to look at, or if you don't know one by heart, which is most of us, right? So I put up some of these pictures, and the first thing we need to do is we need to pick one of the pictures. So like me, I have to choose one of these. So I think I am going with the acoustic guitar right here. Okay, so on my paper, whoops, knocked over my stuff. Actually, I want to make this bigger so you guys can see what I'm doing. Paper. Here's Baby Yoda. He's just going to hang out with us today. All right, so I will be drawing the acoustic guitar. Move my picture out of the way here. Okay, so let's basically, I like to look for simple shapes. So the bottom of it's basically two circles, right? So I'm drawing two circles right next to each other. That's kind of too big. I'm not going to have room for that. Try that again. 1, 2, and it's got the long rectangle part, right? And then it's got a trapezoid on the end. Okay, then you connect the two circles. Let me see if I can get a better view here so you guys can see what I'm doing. Oh my God, that's better. I just need to move my mouse pad out of the way here. Okay, so here's my first circle. And I'm going around the first circle. Here's the second circle. And you just connect the two to make the shape of the guitar. Right, there's the shape of the guitar. And then the end of the guitar. And I need to add that circle right here. Is that the right spot? Yeah, that's the right spot. There's that circle. And then the strings come off of that rectangle just all the way over here. And I think I'm going to draw whatever these things are called. I'm not a musician, I don't know. They're just stripes. Then there's some things to adjust those chords. Okay, and then I just need to draw the strings. And then there's a little bit of a design right here. Like that. Okay, so that is the first part. What is this? Why is that in the way? Okay. And then the second part is tracing. Okay, so if you don't have a marker, just trace it so it's nice and easy to see, so later on we can cut it out. Have a nice thick line to cut on. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and start doing this, you can do this as well. And then the last step would be cutting it out. Okay, so if you don't have scissors, I guess you're just going to leave it on your paper. And then we'll have to figure out a way to do the next part. But if you don't have scissors, you can still trace it, either with your pencil a little bit harder, or a pen or a marker. Here's my guitar. Set this aside. You guys can take a few moments right now to go ahead and do that, just like I did. Here, let me move this out of the way so you can see the. There we go. There you can see the pictures now if you need to look at those. Here's a second piece of paper that I'm going to use. Okay, so right now you should be drawing an instrument on your paper, tracing it, so you have a nice line to cut on, cutting it out. If you're already that far, you can get your second piece of paper ready. Let me get that out of the way here. Okay, so the second part is to trace it on another colored piece of paper, or like if you have wrapping paper or something, and glue it to a third colored piece of paper. Okay, like the examples that you can see right there. Okay, let me make this bigger again. Okay. So now I'm going to trace it. I'm going to use a marker just so you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay, you just hold it. Trace around it. Okay, this is all part of the collage process. Okay, this is all about cutting it out and then adding all the details by cutting out those details and gluing them on. Switching positions here. Okay, so cutting that out. So I guess if you didn't have scissors available, no problem. So at this point, you can color your instrument a solid color. Okay. To figure out how to add the details with shapes, maybe, as if we were cutting them out of different colored pieces of paper. For some reason. Okay, so there it is. Got my final piece of paper. I'm using a blue piece of paper and be gluing onto there. Okay, so you can do the same thing if you're ready. I'm just using a glue stick. That kind of at an angle. Okay, so if you haven't started tracing your instrument on a second piece of colored paper and cutting it out, go ahead and do that. If you're already done and you've cut out your instrument onto a colored piece of paper, you can glue it to a third colored piece of paper. This is all about cutting and gluing to make this collage. Make this small again so you guys can see the other examples. Okay, you can see the other example, how this was their tambourine. They cut it out onto some blue paper, and then they glued the blue paper to a black piece of paper. Similar. Okay, so hopefully by now you've had a chance to at least start cutting out your instrument onto a colored piece of paper. If not, that's fine. We can catch up later. Okay, so the next part, we're going to be adding the details of that instrument back on because we drew them originally. So now we have to put them back on using all different colors, and go back to the white paper, maybe add some colored white paper. So what I did was I started adding cutting out some rectangles to add I think they're called strats maybe. What are those, the things where the strings go across, these little lines over here? Okay, so you can start cutting out shapes, gluing them down. Oops, forgot to zoom in. There we go. Okay, so now you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Okay, so if you're ready to start doing this part, you can go ahead and do that now. Start cutting out the details for your instrument and gluing them on instead of drawing them. It's like we're drawing with scissors today. If you remember when we studied Matisse, they talk about drawing with scissors because it's a collage. And that's how you make collages, by cutting and gluing. Okay, and there's some sort of design on the guitar. I don't actually know if it has a purpose, but it's kind of right there. And then I'm going to add that hole in the guitar. Right there. And that part for the strings back here. Okay, so that's what I mean by adding those details for the guitar. Now, I wish I had the skill to cut out tiny little strings, but I don't, so I'm going to have to draw that part. Don't tattle on me. But if you're able to cut out and glue your details, that is the whole point of this. I'm kind of stuck in a situation where I have to do this because there's no way I can cut out those tiny little string details. So for those of you who don't have scissors and colored paper to work with, so at this point you are drawing or tracing some more details onto your instrument, okay? If you just have a white piece of paper, maybe you can add color to your instrument, so you can start coloring in your instrument. Okay. And we are going to save these, okay? That was a lot to do in 30 minutes. So over the next week, if you can finish cutting and gluing your details and just save it in a safe place so we can work on it next time, we're going to finish this up next week, all right? So keep it in a safe place. If you know you're not going to be in the same place, make sure you pack it in your backpack and take it with wherever you have it for art next week, okay? I hope you guys had fun learning about artists for today. I know I did. It's always fun making collages, and it's even more fun making artwork about instruments. Puts me in a good mood. I hope it put you in a good mood. I really, really look forward to seeing what you guys finish up and work on. Feel free to message me if you have any questions or having any challenges. And I really, really look forward to seeing you guys next time. Have an awesome week.